That's why our fish is here, to get us grounded as to where it would be realistically. So here's our light source. Our light source is shining right here along the middle. So we're kind of going to be careful. And you're going to do a little bit of dark here and a little bit of dark here. Because it's going on both sides, in my opinion. Now, you can make up your own rules if you want. Some of these are judgment calls, just like what I just did. Because somebody might argue that, well, that's really not true. I think it would be more on the bottom, less on the top. So you can do that. It's your call. So you can see how there's a little bit of light hitting there. Now, the inside. So the light's hitting right here. This would be the wall. So just a little bit opposite the wall. Needs light. Now this looks really tricky, but if you practice this, you'll get really good at it, and it's a skill that you'll have for the rest of your life. So it's worth the effort, in my opinion. I wish that my art teachers in the past would have done this, especially maybe even high school, because I really tried to figure this out on my own and had an awful time trying to figure it out until I started listening to Mr. Mark Kistler and watching him work, who I talked about in my previous video of value. And he's the one that made it so that I could understand it. Because sometimes when you look at artistic pieces, it's hard to tell. So now here we have our 3 overlapping corals. We're going to be building this oceanscape. It's like a landscape. So this is the foreground. The middle of the picture is the middle ground, and then the background. So it goes foreground, middle ground, background. Any good landscape, any good oceanscape always has that. Things up close are large. As you go farther away, they're small. Okay, so here's our foreground. I'm going to draw lightly, just some edge to make the foreground landscape come forwards and to have something to build our next shape on. So we're going to build a volcano with the same foreshortened circle. Remember, I said we're going to use that over and over again, that same shape. Here is the oval, and then you just come down and just imaginary sides show up. Now your fish is on top, shining right directly over, kind of the same idea as this one. So what I would do is I would choose. I'm going to make the judgment call that I want to just have my shadow over here. Now you could have more than one light source, but for this I would stick to the one, and then you can fudge it anywhere you need to. Now this is like a rock, this volcano. So it can have an uneven edge. It's not like a round tube. It's got scritchy scratchy back and forth, dents, divots, all that kind of stuff. Okay? I would think over here maybe a little bit too, not too much. I want the sun to mostly be shining right here and less of it here, so that's where the shadow comes in. So I'm going to take my blending stump. Again, I'm going to pull it and curve it. Now, places where it's dark, it is looking like it has holes in it, or it recedes. Places that are light come forward. So you can remember that always. So if I want to make some holes in this, all I have to do is make some dark spots. And I'm kind of putting a texture to it. And you can even blend these too, just a little bit. So you want 100% light, medium, dark to white. Make sure you have some white to make the contrast, make it look like the light's shining. Fish is shining up above. So again, it would be hitting that wall, come around, and then use your blender to pull it. And then you can go back and fix your edges if they look kind of shoddy or scritchy scratchy. You can redo your edge on the lip. And that looks pretty good. Okay, now we want to make this volcano look like a sea creature could swim underneath and hide from a predator. So what you do is you just take a line and add a line in that ripples like a ribbon. And the tops of the ribbon where it's bent, put some dark. So as I was saying, what I did was draw a ribbon edge. We're trying to make this look like there's little crevices underneath where a fish could swim in and escape a predator, a hermit crab, whatever. So I drew this line, and then the top of each one of these ribbon bends, if you want to call it that, I just put in extra black. Now where two things meet, so it would be the sand versus the edge of the volcano, you get a little shadow always. And you can see that here where two things meet. Here's the sand meeting this. And then just use your blender and pull it a little bit, go back. You can put this edge back in if it gets too rumpled. Now I get to draw this all the time. It's my favorite activity to do with 4th and 5th graders. So I've had a lot of practice. Don't be upset if yours doesn't look like mine. It's practice that matters, and this is not the first time or the last time you do this. I think that was too much white there, so I'm just going to use what's on my blender to add a little medium color there. All right, now I did talk about, mentioned just now, where two things come together. If you look, actually, yes. So if you look at where my two fingers are rolling on each other, on the top right, you can see there's an extra shadow. So imagine this is a coral tube overlapped another coral tube. You see that shadow right there. So do the same thing. You can look at your tubes, and where two things touch, you can put extra shadow. So right here, where this one's overlapping this one, I want this to cast the shadow on this. So just a little to the right of that line, make an extra shadow. Now two things are touching here, make extra shadow. This makes this tube feel like it's popping forwards. You can use your blender a little bit to make your shadow push out. Down here even, a little shadow. So it makes this tube look like it's coming forwards. Onto the sand, shadow. Over here on the sand, shadow. You also can look for places where there's triangle shapes, like right here is a triangle. So you would have an extra shadow there. Here's a triangle. I like to look for these. Put a little extra shadow. You can even look up here, and there's kind of a triangular place here where the edge of this meets the edge of the tube, and that makes this pop forwards. Here's a triangle here. So you're kind of adding in these little triangles where two things come together. Here's a triangle. Here's a triangle. So you can try that for effect too. Okay? Right here. Okay? Up here is a triangle shape. So you just go back in and put a little extra black, and it makes your object look more round or layered. So we have the volcano, we have the coral tubes. Let's make a hole in the ground next. Okay, make sure you can see it. So it's also, again, another foreshortened circle. We want to make it look like it's in the ground. So here's an oval. Now you want to have the back of the sand look like it's cut away, so go up on the inside and create another semicircle. So it's like a C shape. And then think about your shadow and where it would hit. So this is my fish, the light comes here, so this right here would need a little shadow. And right here would need a little shadow. The sun would be mostly shining right there, I think. Sometimes you have to guess. Make a little subjective call. So there's the back of the sand right here. If you want, you could put a creature in it. If you want to make a crab, it's pretty easy. Mine's going to end up small in there, but I'll show you here. So a crab is really super easy. You're going to make a swoopy line, a rainbow line. Come back down, now it looks like an eyeball. And then you're going to make the bottom of the shell. Okay? And your crab is going to have some claws, football shape, then put a V in it. Football shape. These are just rainbow lines, put a V in it. Oop, I got carried away there. Erase it out. Then you need to have two little stacks for the eyes, oval, foreshortened circle. Now you need to do its back legs. It's going to have 6 all together. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I curve them. It's kind of like a backwards C shape over here, forward C shape over here. Okay, so there's your crab. So let's say you have a light source coming from here. So the sides. And you can think about the opposite the light source and the opposite the light source. Let's say it's right there. And over here and over here. Everything opposite light source. You take the time to shade in opposite light source. All the places where you imagine that would be. And then take your blending stump and pull it. And you have a three-dimensional looking crab. All I'm doing is blending just a little bit. Just hit it with the blender a little bit. Okay? And you can also think about where the shade would happen on the ground. Okay? So there's a crab. So let's make a teeny tiny one in there. Now I will break out the teeny tiny pencil that I say is not so great for this. It really isn't, but I want you to be able to see what I'm doing. So I'm going to make a rainbow line, upside down rainbow line. I'm going to make a football and a football with a V, football, football with a V, backward C's, backward C. Now I'm not fitting all that one in. You don't have to have all of these parts. Remember, you are using something that's really tiny. Oh, I forgot the edge of my shell. I'll just put it in there. And then we'll talk about trying to put some shadow. These pencils are not my favorite, but this is such a tiny place. Sometimes I have to put up with it. So you can even think about the eyes, these tiny, tiny details. It would be the same though as what you did here with your backwards or your little crescent moon. I'm going to take my blender. It's got enough graphite in it to make this work. Okay? Now I can look and think about shadow. Light's way over here. So your shadow would be underneath your crab. And I'm going to put a little extra on the ground to make it kind of come forwards. Okay? The farthest from the light source gets the shadow.